If you've started fantasizing about being alone in a silent hotel room, that is not you being selfish. If tiny things now feel unbearable, that is not you being dramatic. And if you love your kids deeply, but secretly feel like you are disappearing, you may be closer to parent burnout than you think. Not tired, not just stressed, burned out. And the dangerous part is, most parents do not see it clearly while it is happening. Because parent burnout does not always look like collapse. Sometimes it looks like functioning. You still pack lunches. You still answer emails. You still drive to school, smile at pickup, remember the dentist appointment, sign the permission slip, and reply to that message from another parent you barely know. From the outside, you look fine. Inside, something is fraying. And modern parents are fraying in ways previous generations never had to, because now parenting is not just parenting, it is constant emotional management, it is work pressure mixed with guilt, it is raising children in a digital world that never sleeps. It is trying to protect your child's mental health while quietly losing your own. It is hearing about screen time, teen anxiety, bullying, body image, academic pressure, sleep deprivation, social media addiction, emotional regulation, attachment, resilience, and trauma-informed parenting, all before breakfast. You are not just raising a child, you are managing a small universe. And somewhere in that universe, you started shrinking. That is where burnout begins, not in one dramatic moment, but in the slow loss of yourself. One of the first hidden signs is this: you stop feeling restored by rest. You sleep, but you do not recover. You get a quiet hour, but it does not help. You finally sit down, and instead of feeling relief, you feel numb, or guilty, or strangely restless. Because burnout changes what rest feels like. A tired parent takes a break and begins to come back online. A burned out parent takes a break and still feels offline. That matters, because a lot of parents keep waiting for one early night, one weekend, one holiday, one canceled activity to fix something that is much deeper. But burnout is not just about needing sleep. It is about carrying too much emotional weight for too long without enough replenishment, support, or space to be human. Another hidden sign: you start getting irritated by needs that used to feel normal, not because you do not care, because you are overloaded. The sound of mom, the repeated questions, the forgotten homework, the bickering in the back seat, the endless snacks, the emotional meltdowns at the worst possible time, the sudden crisis right when you finally sat down. It starts feeling like every need is one demand too many. And then comes the guilt. Because good parents are supposed to be patient, right? Good parents are supposed to stay calm. Good parents are supposed to be present. So when you feel your jaw tighten at the sound of your child needing you, you do not think, maybe I'm burned out. You think, what is wrong with me? But that question is often the sign itself. Burnout turns ordinary parenting moments into threats to your already depleted nervous system. It is not that your child became too much, it is that you have been carrying too much for too long. And that overload does not stay neatly contained, it spills everywhere. You may notice you have less empathy, less warmth, less humor. You do not laugh the same. You do not listen the same. You are physically present, but emotionally thinner. Not because your love is gone, because your reserves are. Then there's the sign many parents miss completely: you become emotionally efficient. You stop responding with heart and start responding with management. You are no longer connecting. You are controlling, scheduling, fixing, moving, reminding, warning, optimizing. Your whole relationship with family life becomes operational. What needs doing? Who needs picking up? What form is due? What message still needs a reply? What problem needs solving now? And for a while, that can look like competence, but it is often survival. Because when you are burned out, tenderness feels expensive, curiosity feels slow, patience feels like a luxury item, so you become efficient, and everyone around you may even praise you for it. You are so organized, so on top of everything, so reliable. Meanwhile, inside you feel like a machine running on fumes. That is the cruel thing about parental burnout. The more capable you are, the easier it is to hide, especially if you are the default parent. Especially if you are the emotional center of the home. Especially if everyone assumes you will catch what everyone else drops. And let's talk about one of the biggest pressures modern parents carry, the mental load that never ends. Not the tasks, the tracking, the anticipating, the remembering, the invisible tabs open in your head all day long. The child who seems quieter lately, the teen who is suddenly glued to their phone and says, "I'm fine," in a way that clearly means they are not fine. The weird shift in friendship dynamics, the teacher email you still need to answer, the groceries, the doctor, the bills, the form, the sports kit, the rising cost of everything, the fear that your child is spending too much time online, the fear that taking the phone away will make things worse, the fear that they are comparing themselves to strangers on social media, the fear that they are lonely, the fear that you are missing something important. This is where so many parents live now, not just doing, monitoring, scanning, absorbing, predicting, trying to prevent pain before it arrives, and that constant vigilance burns through the nervous system, especially when you are raising teens, because teen stress does not stay with the teen. It enters the home, through slammed doors, through silence, through late-night scrolling, through tears you were not expecting, through the sentence you don't understand, through the feeling that your child is being shaped by forces you cannot fully see and cannot fully control. Social media has changed parenting in a huge way. Your child's emotional world no longer ends when they come home. Conflict follows them home. Comparison follows them home. Pressure follows them home. And because it follows them home, it follows you too. You're not just parenting your child. You are parenting the algorithm's impact on your child. You are trying to compete with a machine designed to capture attention, trigger insecurity, and keep emotions activated. Of course, parents are exhausted. Of course, your patience is thinner. Of course, your brain feels full. We keep treating burnout like a personal weakness. But a lot of it is the completely predictable result of impossible conditions. Another hidden sign is emotional withdrawal. It's not big dramatic withdrawal. Quiet withdrawal. You stop texting friends back. You do not want to explain how you are doing. You stop reaching out because talking feels like effort. Even support can feel exhausting because you cannot bear one more conversation where you have to turn your internal chaos into coherent sentences. So you say, "I'm just busy." And maybe you are. But sometimes busy is the socially acceptable word for drowning. Burnout also makes pleasure feel far away. Things you used to enjoy start feeling like admin. Reading, cooking, walking, watching something you love, even intimacy, even hobbies, watching something you love, hobbies, even the little rituals that used to make you feel like yourself. It is not always sadness. Sometimes it is flatness, a dulling, a quiet emotional gray, and because you are still functioning, you may not call it what it is. You just keep going. That is what makes this so dangerous. Parents often wait for complete breakdown before they admit they are in trouble, but burnout usually whispers before it screams. Sometimes it whispers like this. You feel trapped by your own life. You look at the calendar and feel resentful before the week even begins. You fantasize about escape, not because you want to leave your family, but because you want to stop being needed for just 1 minute. You crave silence with an intensity that scares you. You begin to understand why some people hide in bathrooms, sit in parked cars, or stay up too late just to get a piece of the day that belongs only to them. That is not you failing at family life. That is you starving for psychological space. There is also a sign that tends to hit high-functioning parents especially hard. You become weirdly detached from your own emotions. You can identify your child's mood in 3 seconds. You can sense tension in the house instantly. You can tell when your teen is spiraling from one sentence and a look, but ask yourself how you are doing and your mind goes blank. Because somewhere along the way, your feelings became less urgent than everyone else's. Your exhaustion had to wait. Your sadness had to wait. Your anger had to wait. Your fear had to wait. Your body learned that your role is to absorb, stabilize, and continue. And that works until it doesn't. Until the body starts keeping score. Headaches, tight chest, racing mind at 2 a.m., snapping over nothing, brain fog, forgetfulness, crying in private over things that do not seem big enough to justify tears, needing sugar, caffeine, scrolling, wine, shopping, noise, or silence just to regulate, Burnout is not only emotional, it is physiological. Your system stops believing relief is coming, so it lives like it is under siege. And here's where many parents get confused. They think if I were really burned out, I would stop caring. But often the opposite is true. Many burned out parents care too much for too long with too little support. They are not disengaged, they are overengaged, over-responsible, hyper-aware, always on, always reachable, always needed. And the more deeply you care, the easier it is to override your own limits in the name of love. That is why some of the most devoted parents are the ones most at risk, especially the ones trying to do it differently, the ones breaking cycles, the ones trying not to repeat what happened to them, the ones who read the books, listen to the podcasts, work on their triggers, apologize after yelling, worry about attachment, and desperately want their children to feel safe, seen, and emotionally secure. Those parents are carrying the child, the home, and often their own unhealed history at the same time. That is not light work, and when no one names the cost, shame moves in. Shame says you should be grateful. Shame says other parents cope better. Shame says if you were stronger, calmer, more organized, more disciplined, more positive, more resilient, you would not feel like this. But shame is a liar. You can love your children and still be deeply depleted. You can be grateful and still be overwhelmed. You can be a good parent and still be near your edge. In fact, one of the clearest signs of burnout is that you no longer feel like yourself around the people you love most. You become the version of you that only knows how to survive the day. Shorter, harder, more distant, more reactive. Less playful, less available. You start mourning a version of yourself you cannot seem to access anymore, and maybe nobody else fully sees it. Maybe they just see that you are more impatient, more forgetful, less fun, more controlling. But underneath all of that is often one desperate truth. You have been strong for too long, and strength without restoration becomes erosion. So what do you do if this is you? First, you stop minimizing it. You stop calling it just a rough week if it has been rough for months. You stop waiting for total collapse to give yourself permission to take it seriously. You stop measuring your pain against someone else's. If your inner world is constantly overloaded, that counts. Second, you notice the signs without turning them into a character verdict. I'm more irritable. I feel numb. I dread normal demands. I can't recover. I feel emotionally far away. Those are signals, not proof that you are failing. Third, you get honest about what is draining you, not in a vague way, in a brutally specific way. Is it lack of sleep, relationship imbalance, being the default parent, financial pressure, teen mental health stress, too much digital noise, workplace demands bleeding into family life? The endless pressure to be available to everyone all the time, because burnout loves vagueness. Clarity is the beginning of change. And then comes the part many parents resist. You have to stop treating support like a reward for reaching breaking point. Support is not the prize you earn after collapse. It is the structure that helps prevent collapse. That might mean asking your partner to take full ownership of specific things instead of helping. It might mean telling a friend the truth instead of saying, "I'm fine." It might mean lowering standards that were never sustainable. It might mean therapy. It might mean saying no to one more activity, one more obligation, one more performance of being endlessly capable. It might mean changing how your home runs so it stops running entirely on your nervous system. And if you are thinking, that sounds nice, but I do not have the luxury of rest, hear this carefully. Burnout recovery is not always about escaping your life. Sometimes it starts with reducing the number of moments your body experiences as relentless, 5 minutes without input. A walk without your phone, one honest conversation, one boundary that actually holds, one task you no longer carry alone, one night where you do not spend your last living energy doom scrolling because it is the only time that feels like yours. Small shifts matter because burned out nervous systems respond to consistency, not perfection. And there is something else you need to hear if this title found you for a reason. Your children do not need a superhuman parent. They need a parent who is allowed to be human. A parent who can model repair. A parent who knows when something is too much. A parent who does not teach them that love means self-erasure, because children are always learning what adulthood looks like by watching us live it. If they grow up seeing you ignore every limit, silence every need, and disappear under the weight of responsibility, they do not just learn sacrifice, they learn that burnout is normal. That is not the legacy you want. The goal is not to become perfectly calm, perfectly balanced, perfectly healed, perfectly regulated all the time. That is another impossible standard. The goal is simpler and harder: to notice when your light is dimming before it goes out, to believe your own exhaustion before your body has to scream, to let support in before resentment hardens, to remember that being needed does not cancel your need. And maybe most of all, to stop asking, "Why can't I handle this better?" and start asking, "How long have I been handling too much alone?" That question changes everything, because the moment you stop blaming yourself, you can finally see the truth. You were never weak. You were carrying an invisible weight with visible grace for longer than anyone should have to. And if you are tired in a way sleep does not fix, if you are touched out, snapped out, maxed out, emotionally thin, secretly aching for distance, and wondering where the old you went, please hear this. The fact that you feel too much does not mean you are broken. It may mean you have been strong past your limits. It may mean your mind and body are asking for mercy, not judgment. It may mean this is the moment you stop pushing through and start listening. Because burnout does not mean you have stopped loving your family. Sometimes it means you have been loving them while abandoning yourself, and you were never meant to survive parenting by disappearing inside it. You are allowed to come back to yourself. Slowly, honestly, without guilt. And that return may be one of the most powerful things you children ever witness. Not a perfect parent, a real one. A parent who stays, a parent who feels, a parent who notices the warning signs in time, a parent who chooses not to vanish. And if that parent is exhausted right now, that does not make them a failure. It makes them someone worthy of care too.